Hi folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. We're working on planting our celosia, our first round for the season, and we're going to be planting this in a no-till bed that we previously had ranunculus in. We're going to show you the tool we used and basically the process and how we do it, so stay tuned. Okay, preparation of the bed was really pretty easy. The ranunculus was already dead, basically had finished its process. So what we did is we came in with a bow rake and we raked off the tops and the bottoms out of the top inch of the soil, put that material in our compost pile to basically just let it cook down and be spread out as a soil amendment later. We didn't disturb any of the lower rooting zones. We didn't do any kind of broad forking or anything of that nature. This is just basically a quick rake. We use in our tunnels the Charles Dowding method of basically top dressing with compost and using that as a way of managing through that mulch the soil moisture and the tilth of the soil itself. After we removed the ranunculus, what we did is we thoroughly wet the bed down, let it sit for a couple of hours, and then we'll start the planting process. So let's look at the tool we use for planting. What we use for planting is what's called a dibble stick. This was simply an old handle that we got off of a shovel, and what we did is we cut it to about 3.5 to 4 foot in length, and then we sharpened the tip to a point, basically to be very similar in size to what would be for a 1.5 inch soil block or a plug from a plug tray, say a 72. And basically we use this to make a hole in the dampened bed to put our transplants. It's very simple. The top of the stick, we just took an old 1.5 inch T PVC and used that as the handle, and it's very easy to grab, big enough to push on. It's kind of makes it very easy to use. So let's take a look at what we do for making the holes and how we space them. Okay, the actual planting itself is done with pushing the dibble stick in, and here's a mark as an example. We push it in, we twist it about, and then just pull it out. It leaves a hole approximately a couple inches deep. Then we move to the next spot, mark it again, push down, twist it around, and pull it out. Not much more to it. As you can see behind it, we already started on some of these things. We're spacing these celosia 5 across and approximately somewhere between 6 and 6+ inches apart between them. Now this is all done by side of the eye, so the exactness is going to be as good as the operator. But in this case, it's really not that important, because the whole point of this is these celosia are going to grow quite fast, and what they're going to be doing is forming a very tight canopy. We're not going to really worry about weeds because the weed bank is quite low in this bed, even though when you look to the side you can see that we do have some weed pressure that we have to deal with on the sides of the bed. But this top compost dressed bed has a very low weed problem in it. So we shouldn't be worried about too much about that this summer. So let's get the holes done, and then we can show you how we're planting the mini blocks. Okay, it didn't take us long to do the holes for the planting. And here's our tray of Summer Celosia. We have 3 different varieties in here. About 100 were planted, 100 soil blocks of each variety were planted. And what we're going to do is plant these mini blocks. These guys were seeded about 3 weeks ago. So they are well on their way to being established. They're already at their pretty close to their second set, or in some cases maybe third set of true leaves. So they're really raring to go. So as we take a look, we've already put some in earlier. This version out here has got all our holes have been dibbled out. Took us about 5 minutes to do, say 150 of these holes, which is about half the tray. So it doesn't take very long to do it. These holes are all ready to go. The soil is already damp. So what we'll do is we'll put the plants in and just kind of quickly heal them in a little bit and show you, how fast it is you can plant these mini blocks in this method. Okay, the first variety we're putting in is Sunday Purple. These guys, they do have a little bit of root system to them. It's not too bad. The holes, sometimes the soil is soft and you can dibble maybe a little too deep. If that's the case, I kind of just tend to hold it in and then just push down. And it's really a quick process of planting. It takes more time basically to get them out of the tray than it does to stick them in the ground. There's 3 more. We're just going to gently ease them apart. And it's pretty easy to reach across the entire bed to try to get the whole thing planted. So I can basically plant the bed from one side. And that's the whole point of having a bed that's no more than 36 inch. So I can easily reach from one side to the other without having to, jockey around and get on the other side of the bed to plant. Same holds true for harvesting. It's easier to harvest on this width of bed than it is to, say, a bed that's 4 feet wide. You'd actually have to have access to both sides. So let's get all these guys in. And then the last step we're going to do is just make sure that they're puddled in and that there's enough soil that has collapsed around the root zone. And we do that by watering them in. There is one thing to note. When we dibble in, we're dibbling through the mulch layer and to the soil itself. So when the mini block is put into the hole, its roots are making contact with the soil. So we're not planting into the mulch itself. The dibble stick is actually pushing the mulch down or aside, and so there's actually contact with the soil itself. The mulch on top acts as an organic insulation, which helps retain moisture as well as provide some nutrients as it begins to break down. Okay, it took us about, give you about a half hour to plant 300 of these guys, which, for a non-mechanical way of doing things, moved pretty fast. So as I kind of show you the row, you can kind of see that we still have the back half yet to fill out. So that we'll throw a tarp over once we're finished today, because we're going to come back in a few days and probably plant it later. But that way it'll conserve the moisture into it and also kind of prevent any weeds from getting started. And if they do get started, they're going to die pretty fast under the tarp. So as you can see, they're all in. Our next and last step before we put the drip tape down is all we need to do is kind of water these guys in. So this was a tray of 300 mini blocks, and we had 3 different types of celosia, and they're all planted and tucked in. Please never mind the weeds off to the side. We'll take care of those soon. But the bed itself is actually very clean. Okay, we've got them all puddled in or watered in deeply. And with the thing about mini blocks is when you're planting these guys is they can dry out very quickly. So you want to make certain that the bed you're planting them into is sufficiently damp to start with, and so that any water you are applying doesn't just run off. So the whole key to this getting this successfully to take for these mini blocks that we've found is watch them for a few days. You might need to irrigate them a couple of times. It just depends on how the weather is. We're going to have some overcast weather for a while, so it's probably not going to be too bad. But the last step we'll do tomorrow, since it's getting late in the day, is we'll lay our drip tapes out. But we may overhead water again simply because it's necessary to keep enough water around the actual root part of the plant itself until it's established itself. And sometimes, depending on how the weather is, that could be a couple of weeks. You may have to keep an eye on it, see how it goes. So anyway, want to thank you for watching today. And as you can see down below here, we've got our celosia in. And that took us totally about from bed prep to getting these guys planted in, watered in. It was probably about a 2-hour job, but that's not bad for a bed turnover. And we didn't have to apply any additional compost at this point or any additional minerals. We still had quite a bit left over from what we put on in the fall. So this will take us through our rotation through probably frost, because these plants, as they come up, we'll pinch them, and so we'll get multiple stems out of them, and we'll cut on them for quite some time. It takes about 100 days or so for celosia to get up to size, so it's going to be an August, September, and October type of harvest. Then after that, we'll rotate those out, we'll cut them off, leaving the roots in the ground, and then apply compost, and then start our fall, winter plantings for next spring. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching today, and if you learned something, that's great. Always hopeful that happens. And if you like the video, please hit the subscribe button. A thumbs up is always helpful. And if you're new to us and you like what you saw, you learned something, maybe check out some of our other videos, become a subscriber. And I want to thank you again for watching today, and well, I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye.